Worldwide movement. Peace, love, respect. Big King S.2 hollering at you one more again. Welcome to Building with Big King, folks. I'm starting out an apology. This is the first time we missed our 333 synchronicity. Boo! Big King had some slight technical difficulties. I apologize. We're getting the stream going a little bit late here this week. But nonetheless, we're still here and we're still ready to build and continue to build the blocks, right? And set down the blocks that build the foundation of this new paradigm that we're moving into. A high vibrational frequency paradigm that we like to say exudes peace, love, respect. So worldwide movement, peace, love, respect. Yes, family, we in here today still. True indeed. We had 2 weeks of technical difficulties of two different of a different nature. But again, I apologize for missing the synchronicity today at 3:33. Last week we got cut off early. I apologize for that. But we did have a very interesting subject on our Easter/420 conversation for the podcast. And we have yet again a very interesting subject for this week. All right, folks. So this week we're going to be discussing the impact of intention, right? I'm going to approach this in terms of introducing this subject in several different ways, right? We'll look at it from 3 different perspectives, or at least 3 different angles to which we can sort of address this. First, I'll talk about what we believe, right? Why we believe it. And then I'm going to get into a little bit of science that just might suggest that we need to believe differently, right? So, what do we believe in terms of the impact? First of all, let me explain what I mean when I suggest the impact of intention. Well, first of all, folks, we're talking about human intention, right? This is an attempt for me to relay an aspect of our consciousness, or to talk about how an aspect of our consciousness is impactful on our reality, right? An aspect of our consciousness referring to our intention and how that is impactful on our actual 3D, 4D reality, right? All right. So going back, I'll say that, you know what? I talked a little bit about our late start. This is interesting. I didn't even mean for this to happen. Right. The creator always puts us in perfect position to get the perfect message across. So intention. I'll get into a little bit of why the podcast was late today. Not getting into a complete explanation, but quite a ways back, I started experimenting with the power of my intention, right? And I said to myself, well, I'd like to start to not rely upon artificial technology as much for things that I should be able to impact within my own life, right? Uh, so I came up with the fact that, listen, I want to start waking up when I decide I should wake up. This is my body. I have full control over my body, as I should, as we all should, right? And certainly my consciousness should direct that control. So if I intend, and my intention being an aspect of my consciousness, if I intend to awaken at a certain time, I should just awaken at a certain time. I don't need to have an alarm clock to be able to command my body to awaken at a certain time. Well, then the next question or thought in most people's minds is, well, yeah, but how does your body know what time it is? Well, think about it. Doesn't our body always keep track of time, right? Um, think about different times in which our body has reactions or adjustments it makes automatically to the time of day, right? You could just look at the way your body begins to, and this, blind people specifically uh, have, I forget what it's called, but they have an issue with dealing with this at times. Some of them do, with their body learning to go to sleep or get sleepy or tired at the right time, right? Because they're not looking at the sun or sunlight or natural light as a key as to, or sort of a setting of their internal clock as to when their body should get tired. Um, this just shows how naturally our bodies have the ability to keep track of cycles, right? And what is time but a measurement of cycles? So I started doing that, right? I started testing myself. I would come up with a certain time in my mind that I want to awaken. We'll go with the time of day that I'm going to, or the time that I'm going to awaken to start the day in the AM, right? Um, and after experimenting with it, not even two or three times, I started to awaken exactly almost at the time that I intended to. And then when I really got used to it, I regularly got to a point where um, my body just automatically awakened exactly at the time I intended it to, right? Um, and this is not that strange. I have heard a lot of people talk about how when they know they have to work the next day, their body automatically pops up at the time they have to be to work just because they're so used to that cycle, right? Um, so that's what happens with us. We become used to cycles, and our bodies are attuned naturally to keep track of cycles. Um, but then I started to change my or to test my experimentation, uh, 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 the ability to awaken upon a specific time that I just intend to. I said, well, I'm going to start attempting to apply that to different times of the day, right? So I started experimenting with naps, right? What do you mean? So I would take a nap at, some later part in the day, not wanting it necessarily to be a long nap, but just I want to get to sleep and test my ability to awaken myself. So I would, middle of the day, early evening, set aside a half an hour, right? And I would tell myself, okay, here's what time it is. and a half an hour for that's another thing. I wouldn't do it at the same time every day. So there wasn't a natural cycle already established, right? So what I would do is at varying times, I just look at the clock and say, okay, a half an hour from now, I'm commanding my body to awaken. 1/2 hour, 30 minutes. I know how long a minute is. I know how long 30 is. I can count to 30. I want 30 minutes to pass by and I'm commanding my body to awake. Within 1 or 2 additional tries, I was able to accomplish that. Okay. And then in doing so and refining that ability, I pretty much stopped using alarm clocks altogether. Um, and I was getting to the point where I was not using any sort of a timer whatsoever, just like even with cooking. You have to cook a certain thing for a certain amount of time. Um, Different ways that I would test that as well. And I was having a decent amount of success, not relying on timers or clocks to awaken, but relying on my intention. Folks, just to recap real quick, what's happening or what we're discussing in terms of today's subject matter is the power of intention, right? And by that, I'm suggesting the impact, or not the power, but the impact of intention. I'm suggesting intention to be an aspect of our consciousness, and the impact would be on our 3D, 4D corporeal reality, right? Um, so I was talking a little bit how I begin to experiment with myself, um, not needing to rely on timers or clocks. And I got pretty good with that. Well, today I shot myself in the foot, so to speak. Not literally. You have to watch what you're saying because that counts. But anyway, I went against my old or what I had already established as an ability, right? And I said, well, oh man, I'm a little thrown off. I know I'm tired because my night went longer than I expected, a lot longer than I expected, and how I typically do on with a night's rest leading up to a podcast, right? So I said, I think I better be safe and set an alarm. So I did that. And wouldn't you believe it? Wouldn't you know? By doing that, I sent a signal to myself, to my body, that, oh, we must not be doing the control of your body thing anymore. And now we must be reliant upon clocks and timers again, right? Remember, your body is always paying attention to you. You are the master of your own body, of your existence on a whole. So that's why the podcast was late today, because my alarm didn't go off. Relying on an artificial alarm, it didn't go off. I figured out why it didn't go off at the appropriate time. But regardless, I set myself up for that failure by relying on an artificial means to accomplish something that I had already established I could do without relying on artificial means. But anyway, I should have relied on my intention and trusted its impact. All right. But that was more of an anecdotal look at today's subject matter. Y'all know we got to have a sense of humor getting through this thing, folks, right? And I certainly don't lack that. Okay. But getting back into the 3 different ways we want to take a look at this. First of all, what do we believe in terms of the impact of our intention, right? Um, Folks, in short and in general, most of us grew up and continue to believe that our intention has very, very limited impact, right? Um, period. That is just what we believe. We kind of look at our intention as a wish, right? I wish this would happen. And if it happens, oh, my wish was granted, right? And not I made that happen with my intention. You see the difference. Carrie, thank you so much. And Alicia in the building as well. Thank you, family, for joining me. Y'all can kick me in the butt next time you see me because I was late and y'all here with me. So thank you so much. I appreciate you, true indeed. But yeah, that's what we're talking about, the impact of our intention, right? Um, and that most of us generally grow up and continue throughout our lives believing that our intention has very little or very limited impact on our actual reality. All right. Why do believe that? Do we believe that is the second aspect or perspective from which I want to look at this. In general, we believe this because we are taught and indoctrinated with through various different forms of that teaching throughout our lives. King Dread, Word Life family, thank you for coming in here with us and joining the forum as we continue this discussion. Today's subject matter, just rehashing real quick, the impact of intention. Sorry for not getting that into the description, folks, what today's subject matter is, but we're again discussing the impact of intention. And when I say that, I'm talking about intention as an aspect of our consciousness, and the impact would be on our 3D, 4D physical or corporeal reality, right? And I stated that we'll look at it from three different perspectives or different angles or aspects of this conversation. And the first being, what do we believe? Most of us generally believe that our intention carries very little or very limited impact, right? On our actual reality, what happens in our lives every day, we believe is not very greatly impacted by our intentions. Then I said, next, we'll take a look at why we believe that. And I think it's an interesting thing. Why we believe that begins, I think, very early in our life as an aspect of what we're taught, or you could say indoctrinated with, right? We're taught about all these different things that impact our reality and all these different things that we are sort of subject to as human beings, as opposed to having a say so or an impact at all on different factors of our lives, things like the weather, right? We go outside and see what the weather's going to be, and most of us tend to look towards some sort of a prognosticator like a meteorologist to be able to speak to us as to what the weather will be that day, the next day, or sometimes as far away as the entire week and the next week, right? So we have really grown comfortable in being able to rely on, or needing to rely on, external sources to tell us what our reality will be. When we do that, and when we have become so explicitly reliant on external sources dictating to us or letting us know what the actual parameters of our reality are, then we send a very direct signal to our body, to ourselves, our consciousness, that we are impactless with our intention on our reality, that our intention doesn't really carry that much weight. And, with all things, we have to go back in retrospect and understand that like the things our parents teach us, and many other people who are innocently teaching things as we grow up, like our teachers in school, many of them very good people, but maybe passing on to us traits, thoughts, information that could shape us in a way that is not necessarily the most empowering, right? And again, that's something that we're taught very early on, that, our intentions can be good, but reality can have another thing in store for us. Very rarely do we ever get the message, especially early on in our lives, that our intentions for what our reality is going to be matter, right? You can intend on this happening, but you'll see what happens. And then there's that. I'm going to get into a really good one now. Then there's that phrase that we're taught so incredibly early on that is so impactful and takes away our empowerment. Remember this phrase and how many times it was drilled into your head while you were young. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. What? Really? That's what was driven into our psyche, that we should hope for the best and prepare for the worst. Well, folks, right then and there, that preparing for the worst part of it is you sending a direct signal not only to your body, not only to your consciousness, but you are spewing out into the quantum field that you should brace for the absolute worst outcomes. That's what we just said. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. That's what that phrase is doing. We are actually telling our reality, I expect the worst outcome any minute now, right? To be what my reality is. And you are completely voiding your intention, right? Now, Miss Black, thank you for jumping in with us. I appreciate you always. And folks, as we continue to have more people coming in and chiming in, and thank you for introducing yourselves in the chat. I always like to say hi and acknowledge you. And a salute out to all of y'all. Miss Black, King Dread, Alicia, and my beautiful, wonderful sister who has recently joined the forum, Sister Carrie. Man, I appreciate all of y'all having my back, jumping in and joining this forum and making it the wonderful conversation place that it has become. Now, when we take a look at the science, which is what we're about to start to do, of what human intention actually is and what experiments, with a very huge body of scientific attention paid to that question, because scientists have been conducting experiments relevant to this, going back, I believe, into the early 20s, at least as far as published scientific accounts. There were scientists back in the 20s doing experiments on this, right? And one of the really powerful and interesting experiments, I forget the exact year when this was first done, but this is a pretty, it was a long time ago when this experiment was first conducted, what they call the split screen or double slit experiment. It's got a few different names or terms to it, right? But essentially, I'll attempt to give a layman's term relaying of what this experimentation was all about. So scientists were beginning to study the behavior of something called photons, right? Photons are actually aspects of our sort of some of the smallest particles of our reality, right? Neutrinos, photons can exist as neutrinos. Neutrinos are the particles that are a layer or a level smaller than atoms, right? Neutrinos are considered to be subatomic. And photons can be subatomic as well. So we relate to and look at photons, which are the this is where it gets a little confusing, but I'm trying not to make it confusing. I said that photons exist as subatomic particles, and they do. They make up what eventually ends up being at the atomic level light, right? Which you kind of get a hint with that. Photons, photos, the English language bears it out a little bit. But oh, we got Michael Washington in the house as well. Good brethren, thank you again. A lot of props and appreciation for Brother Washington. Jumps in. He was told about the got hip to the podcast, jumped in automatically, and faithfully has been with us here every week. Thank you, brother. Here's your salute. You deserve that. Word life. But yeah, photons began to be recognized by scientists as one of the smallest, or I guess we will have to use the word small to relay scale aspects of our reality, and could exist and can exist all the way down to a subatomic level like neutrinos are. But photons being with our reality relayed by scientists and the way scientists tend to look at things, right? Photons make up or some of the smallest components of our reality, right? So you may even often hear that we live in a photonic reality. That's what they're talking about. That this is essentially a light matrix, right? Our existence, our entire existence is a light matrix. So I don't want to delve too much into that part of it, but let's get back to the split screen experiment and how photons really gave us an incredible revelation. So what scientists decided to do was to take a screen in a controlled environment, and there are two slits in this sort of little wall that they made, right? And they decided in this controlled environment, we're going to fire these photons, so to speak. That's the best easy description I can give as to what they did with these photons. They fired the photons, or directed the photons, maybe that's a better word, at this wall, right? And they did so expecting that the photons would follow what is the expected outcome or pattern, which is randomness, right? That there would be a certain randomness. They might discover some form of a pattern, but overall, they were just looking to establish the fact that it would be random. And upon firing these photons, that getting back to the random aspect, that a certain amount would go in one side slit on one side, and some would go on the slit on the other side. Okay, they fired the photons at the two slits on this wall, and they got initially pretty much what they expected to as a result. But then, I think it was by accident that this occurred, actually. But then they got something, had something transpire that completely blew them out of the water, right? And what happened is they noticed as they were, I think they were changing experiment, or preparing to change and run a different experiment or something like that, or alter the experiment in some way. And for a moment, the photons were still firing at the screen with the two slits in it, but they stopped looking at it for a little bit so that they could continue their preparation either to alter the experiment or begin the early stages of a new experiment. So anyway, they diverted their attention to those preparations. What they discovered as the photons firing at the screen were still, the results were still being recorded, right? They discovered that the outcome of where the photons actually went, or the patterns they saw or did not see in the placement of the photons, changed during the time that they weren't observing. And then when they went back to observing, the photons went back to behaving how they thought they would behave. Wait a minute. This must just be an anomaly, was their first thought, because it doesn't make sense. It shouldn't matter whether or not they were looking at the experiment taking place or not. It was being recorded. So that whatever the recording would have picked up should have been exactly the same as the results or the outcomes that they got when they originally ran the experiment. There should have been a certain level of randomness. Well, they went back and reviewed the recording to find that when they weren't looking, the photons took on entirely new directions as to where they would go through the split screens. So the first thing scientists automatically do is, and the question they ask is, in this experiment environment, is this repeatable? Okay. Is this something that was just a quirk, a fluke, or what they refer to as an anomaly? Is this an anomalous event in the experiment? Or is this something that we can repeat? So they did. They repeated those conditions where they took away all observation while still running and recording the experiment. Lo and behold, the same thing occurred. The outcome of how the photons behaved changed depending on whether or not human beings were observing the experiment. Woo! Stop for a second and take that in. I'm telling you that scientists had concluded that some of the most basic aspects of our reality are photons. And to observe the behavior of photons is to observe our reality and how or what it is comprised of, right? What influences, shapes, and impacts it. They had already accounted for and accepted randomness, right? And had got confirmation of that through the results and outcomes of the experiment, but then discovered that human observation was an actual factor in the results of how the photons behaved. So you telling me that whether or not we're looking at something changes the reality of it? Think about how powerful that is. Folks, this is scientific revelation, right? We're talking about scientists stumbling upon something that caused them to question almost everything they understood about our physical reality, about human beings, and how we interact or impact our reality. if we are seeing that photons, which is are considered to be sort of that's a better way to express it, I think. Photons are scientifically considered to be the building blocks of our 3D, 4D corporeal reality or existence. So if we are living in this photonic reality, and we've discovered scientifically that photons, the building blocks of that reality, can be impacted or directed or changed, altered in some way in terms of their behavior based on human interpretation or human observation, that is earth-shattering if you take a moment to ponder the implications. It says to us with scientific evidence that our observable reality is impacted, is not just impacted, but actually directed by our observation, by our consciousness. That is immensely powerful, right? So, and I'm gonna get ready to jump in the chat because I can't wait to hear what everybody's got to say about this, right? We have scientific evidence. And again, this is an old experiment. Do your own free thinking research, and you'll have no problem at all finding this experiment that I'm referring to, right? And these results, and this scientists had, folks, and that's the beautiful thing about studying science, right? There are so many times that, and this is obviously a necessity of our evolution. There are so many times that we are surprised and that we have to grow and expand our understanding of existence because of revelations we gain through science. Okay? For us to discover through scientific experimentation that human observation impacts and directs the behavior of photons, which are established to be the building blocks of our 3D, 4D corporeal physical reality, then we have just established scientifically that human consciousness or various aspects of it impact and direct our reality. Who told you what? Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Where they do that? Why would we? Why don't we set the best outcomes that we could possibly imagine in our minds, visualize it, and only accept that in perception as our reality? You need more. There are various aspects that have been observed through a litany of experimentation about how human DNA expresses itself. I've touched on this in a ton of my videos and even on previous podcasts, that when human DNA is impacted, I'm trying to get the right word. When human DNA is exposed to and exists in a high vibrational frequency environment, it expresses far more completely than when it is not. And in fact, when it is in a low vibrational frequency, it recoils and constricts and does not express itself anywhere near completely as it would in a high vibrational frequency environment. We are taking our own DNA and walking it backward every time we make statements like that and we believe it. Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. When we do that, we're creating our own low vibrational frequency environment to exist in. We talked about how our human physical corporeal existence, our bodies, is the environment in which our DNA has an opportunity to express, and that we see and have measured how when human beings are able to attain and resonate at higher vibrational frequencies, indeed, their DNA does express much greater and much more completely. Folks, and I got to digress a little bit. When we talk about human beings being in or existing in or resonating in a certain vibrational frequency, we're talking about the fact that it has also been scientifically studied and charted. I try to put two words together. Scientifically studied and charted that human beings, and I'm gonna try to cut myself short because I promised to get in the chat. I see already folks got some good comments and input. Um, Human beings have been studied in various mental and emotional states, right? And literally have been measured by EMF meters, right? What vibrational frequency we exist in when we're, or what that we resonate in when we're existing in different mental and emotional states. This is how scientists were actually able to formulate a chart, right? And you can do the free thinking research on that. It's not really all that difficult to find this chart. A chart that shows you how human beings um, are measured, or where they land at in terms of measurement of vibrational frequency according to those different states. An example would be when you are in a state of fear, you're pretty much resonating at the lowest vibrational frequencies, and they chart that. And it sort of climbs all the way up to elation or enlightenment, to where you get the highest vibrational frequencies. And at the top of that chart, believe it or not, is actually love, right? And then all sorts of different mental states in between as you climb up and down the chart. Um, are you nervous? Are you, excited? Are you feeling hesitant or trepidatious? All sorts of different mental states and emotional states, and they charted all of that. Well, that's just to understand how we can continue to relay, because I do it all the time. I talk about how we resonate in terms of our vibrational frequency, and I wanted that to have some context, at least in this conversation. Okay. But yeah, folks, these are the kinds of things that we have through scientific experimentation discovered and gained revelation into the fact that we are indeed impactful on our actual reality, and that our consciousness weighs heavily in on that. Now, there have also been studies done where they see through imaging um, that your thoughts are electrical pulses or charges, or can be measured as electromagnetic expression that they can see in what we would call actual sparks in your brain when you're thinking or experiencing different mental or emotional states. Um, and that we can convey that, we do convey that, and that it is actually impactful on the quantum field, right? And there's a ton of experimentation and the accompanying results on that. Do the free thinking research, and you will easily find it. Okay. Um, and we see that your intentions also are observable in that way through imaging, right? They're actual um, electromagnetic expressions, or again, loosely, we would call them like sparks that you can see in your brain when you're um, formulating and expressing your intentions. So we have the ability, and this ties greatly into manifestation. We have the ability to direct to the quantum field what our intentions are. Our intentions, as established through science, impact the photons that make up and that are the building blocks of our actual reality. So your intention impacts your actual reality. So perhaps we need to take a little bit of a different look on our intention than to say something like, or believe something like, or to allow us to register in ourselves, in our psyche, in our consciousness, or perhaps even more important, that we spew out of our mouths out into the quantum field, to not take such a whimsical and negative perspective as to say, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. Maybe we ought to take a little bit of a different look and stance on that. All right, jumping into the chat, Brother Michael Washington says, not looking, photons behave like waves, showing interference. Yes, an important aspect of our reality is that photons actually express in our reality in both wave and particle form simultaneously. Deep. All right. Thank you for that, brethren. He says, and through looking, he means observing, equals photons behave like particles. Yes, no inference. Well, that is important and powerful because we've established that through that scientific experiment, all of that is impacted by our consciousness, by such easily dismissible aspects of our consciousness as our observation. Just the sheer fact of whether or not we're looking at something changes the reality of it. Powerful. Thank you, brother Michael, for those comments and statements. Sister Carrie jumps in and says, right? Yeah. Yes, that's true indeed. You all are way more powerful than what we are taught as we're growing up, and the indoctrination that we receive from a litany of sources externally. See, this reflects back to why it's so important for us to get back in touch with looking within, right? Because remember, it's the external sources that put us in that box, that taught us that we don't have any impact on our reality. That was external. And it was when we actually observed one of our internal functions that we realized, wait a minute, we do have impact on our reality, right? So yeah, that is powerful, right? That is powerful. And I, for one, think that I know that in my life, I'm going to focus every day forward more and more training myself to expect that my intentions, my interpretations, even my observations impact my actual reality. And with that understanding, why wouldn't I envision for myself, the very best outcomes now and forward? What kind of life do we want to live, folks? And science even suggests that it is up to us, right? Life does not happen to us. As it turns out, scientifically proven, and all this was known by the ancients and the indigenous, by the way. And there's a litany of studies that you have in front of you there if you want to do the free thinking research to go back to where they attempted to pass that information on to us. Look into the Hopi Indians, look into Tibetan monks. You can look back into those Mayan priests and scholars, and all sorts of different sources going all the way back through antiquity, where human beings have attempted to communicate this science and information to one another. Now, unfortunately, this falls into the category of the sort of thing that is kept from us. And if you think about it, if you're the socially economic elite, yeah, you would want to keep this kind of thing from us. You certainly wouldn't teach it in the schools, because how many of us were taught anything like this, right? Although I do have to say, I remember having some exposure to the split screen or the two-slit experiment, but that's neither here nor there. I wasn't told a whole lot, or it certainly wasn't emphasized, that human observation had been discovered to be impactful during that experimentation. So, but anyway, still, it is external sources that put us in that box of limitation. And it is through looking within and understanding the power and the impact of our intention on reality itself that we can begin to visualize, right, and forecast into the quantum field, thus reverberating back to us our reality, right? And in that, we can forecast our best outcomes. Best self, best life. All right. Anybody else got any comments, statements, questions? Please jump in. I want to know more about what y'all think about this. This is, to me, is very exciting because it only celebrates and emphasizes to you, with the backing of science, our empowerment as human beings. Don't feel helpful. Don't feel like you are stuck in a terrible life. I hear so many people as I'm walking around just daily say things like, I hate my life. They even got this new statement where people say, F my life. What? Do you know what you just did? You just spewed out the most negative, by the way, the word F, I hate to say it, but fuck, right? When we look back at it through etymology and its roots, actually means, through its Germanic roots, to hit or strike, or in some way cause violence. Did you know that? Did you know when you walk around saying fuck all the time that you spewing violence and probably, I guess we would say, about the lowest form of negativity that you possibly could, right? This is why I no longer refer to my lovemaking or intimacy as fucking, because it's violent, right? So imagine when you take and spew out into the quantum field a phrase like, fuck my life. What? By the way, embrace the most beautiful life of Big King S.2. I was just Don't take that down. Don't reverberate that back to me. I was just doing that for purposes of education, right? But yeah, people do that. People walk around saying this and they mean it, right? Which means you put behind it electrical charge. Remember, your emotions carry electrical charge. So if you mean it and you have that sort of emphasis, you just not only said it, but you charged it up too. Wow. And then we sit back and we wonder why we start to get things into our lives that we don't want to see. Why we get outcomes in our lives that instead of the best outcomes actually could be the worst. Because we called for that. We used our intention to impact our reality. Even though it was on a subconscious level, we still spewed verbally our intentions into the field. Maybe we also ought to watch what we say, especially in terms of how we relate to, speak about, or forecast our lives. Jumping back in the chat, true indeed, Brother Washington says, your words are strong. Yes, they are strong. They are, in fact, I like that word, they're strong, but I'll go a step further and say they are powerful. They are immensely powerful. And folks, this is why there is a such thing as spells, right? That is the science behind spells. Yeah. See, people, magic is really just science. It's esoteric science that is applied in ways that call us or cause us to look at it as something other than science because of, well, we can get into all the social and religious impacts or ways that we view that whole genre of utilizing spells. And that causes us to think, view, and approach that whole subject from a certain standpoint that isn't very enlightening. But I think it's important we understand the science of that because, folks, whether you like it or not, spells are used around you all the time. Your government uses the science of spells on you all the time. You can even relay it visually, right? When we write down, because we write down what we're speaking, and it is the same conveyance of intention. When you see words and read them, there is a certain impact that is similar to how spells impact your reality, right? For example, I don't want to open another book. I was getting ready. I'll throw the example out there, but I'm not going to go into it because it's too vast of a subject matter. It'll have to be a whole nother podcast or two. But the many of you have heard of your straw man, right? That's when you receive, you know how you get mail and it's in all caps, right? And you wonder, why are they, all right, it's not coming to me typically. Like how you would typically write your name is the first letter of your name is capitalized and then the rest of it is lowercase, whether it's your first or second or last name. But we get a lot of, for lack of a better description, official communications that are given to us via mail and other sources that are in all caps. That's them utilizing or tapping into that whole straw man magic, right? Which is actually not magic at all. It's more, again, I don't want to start getting into that. But so maybe that was the best example because it opens up too much. But the point is this, that it is no secret the power and impact of spells. And I just told you why it's a real thing. Because it is the conveying of human intention into the quantum field by thinking the thought and transforming it from thought form, which thought form is a fourth dimensional aspect, from thought form into corporeal 3D existence by speaking it and spewing it out into the quantum field, right? So yeah, that's an aspect or a usage of the fact that your intentions are impactful, powerfully impactful on your reality, and the usage of spells, right? Um, Charge. Michael Washington comes back in and says, Charge. Okay, so he says, oh, my fault. Let me jump back up, bro. Yeah, your words are strong, true indeed. Put in your mind that negative vibe, right? Um, yeah. That's what I was talking about, and I guess that's what he means, charge. So you are, when you say things like hope for the best, prepare for the worst, right? Or whatever may end up being a spell, right? Um, you're speaking into the quantum field. If it has that negative connotation or interpretation, you're actually speaking into the field a negative directive that is charged with your actual emotion, right? Your emotions, again, folks, are electromagnetic in nature and are very powerful, right? Human emotions are immensely powerful, right? And you have the ability to charge your intentions electromagnetically as you spew them into the quantum field and have them reverberate back to you as your reality. Man, I like where this is going and where it went, y'all. Come on, give me more. Give me more. Thank you, Brother Washington. I appreciate that, Mike. Salute to you again, brother. Anybody else jump back in? Brother King Dread, if you got something to say on that note. Sister Carrie, Cuz Alicia, anybody else got a comment or question or statement? Anybody else, and not just the folks I mentioned, but anybody else who may be watching, observing, does anybody have anything to say on that? Because I think it's quite profound, right? The profundity of it is like immense. I mean, it's hard to really grasp the real implications of what I'm saying. Your intentions go a long way toward determining and dictating what your actual 3D, 4D, corporeal, or physical reality, your existence is on this plane. That's powerful. That is extremely powerful, right? And it, if nothing else, to me, and I would think to most of us, says that we really, or suggests, should I say, that we really, really ought to think carefully before we speak, especially when we speak into the quantum field with great emotion, right? Think about that. Brother Michael Washington jumps back in and says, when we speak or observe, it looks reality into one path, or locks. Oh, excuse me, I was looking. That's a visual misread on my part. Good point. He says, when we speak or observe, it locks reality into one path. Yes. Yes. Thank you for saying that. That is another aspect of that experimentation. The scientists have observed that there is something called a superposition, right? Where those photons or particles can be in a superposition, which means that in layman's terms, they're neither here nor there, but can potentially be in both, right? And what he's saying is spot on target. When you speak, your intention, when you solidified your intention down from thought form into a 3D, 4D communication, when you speak or spew your intention out into the quantum field, you are locking those photons, those particles of reality into position. They were in a superposition that could be that had several different potentials. Okay? But when you do that, you are locking into a specific potential. Right? You are utilizing the impact of your intention to solidify your reality by locking those particles, those photons, into a specific position rather than a superposition that has multiple potentials. You're locking them into a specific potential. That's powerful. Thank you yet again, brother Michael. This, if I had a little, I gotta get me some little. Hold on, let me see. I might got some tools in here. Let me get some acknowledgement. This brother deserves. Where's them little fire joints that you can let off or something to acknowledge how he's knocking it out the park here today? I don't know. Give him something. Here, there's a little something. He's blowing it up. Okay, that's the best I can do for right now. I gave you some dynamite sticks, bro, because you blowing it up right now. Thank you, man. Really appreciate your impact on this week's conversation. Your intention. he impactfully, he intentionally impacted the forum and the conversation in a positive way. Thank you, brother. We appreciate all that. Anybody else want to chime in with something? I mean, I guess I'll be getting ready to close this out soon, but I almost don't want to stop this subject. Man, this is right in my wheelhouse, folks, in terms of things that I've always, growing up in life, just naturally sort of question these things, right? That's just the way my mind has always worked. I've always wondered why and why not. And shouldn't we be? I've always viewed ourselves as being more powerful and impactful. Word life. Yeah, man. You deserve them dynamite sticks, man. I'm gonna start coming up with something else, some other way I could use to acknowledge when people really are giving contributions that are furthering along the conversation. And all of you do that. Thank you all, and I continue to salute all of you, truly. But I think he really was like spot on. Is this something that you studied before or currently, Brother Michael? He'll let us know in a minute. It's all to the good. But yeah, man, if anybody else has anything else that they want to, any statement they want to make, question they want to make, or comment they want to add, please do so. Because I like to see this conversation continue, man. This is, I mean, otherwise I'll close it out in a minute, but this is just fascinating to me again, because it only reinforces that we control our own destiny, so to speak, right? Or do we have to even give credence to that word, destiny, when we're discovering that it's really all about us and how we impact our reality, right? Destiny is sort of one of those external concepts that we accept and give power to, right? Like fate, an external concept that we accept and give power to. Nah, bro. Okay. Word life. Well, having not studied it, man, you still came in with some real poignant and some very, very strong observations on it. And I thank you for that, right? True indeed. And again, folks, we all can, and I would suggest should do some form of free thinking research on this subject, because there is a treasure trove of information on this that has been there. I think that most of us just don't know to look for it, right? But now you do. So let's do that, because we have the opportunity to be incredibly powerful in our own lives, right? And folks, by the way, when we get together, um, either in person or in thought, intention, consciousness, or some way communicate with one another, we're then co-creating our reality, right? So now we are, as human beings, um, sort of putting our own ingredients into the pot of what we call our shared reality. Think about that. When we do that, we're all cooks, all putting ingredients into that pot of what we call our shared reality. All right? Man, again, enough for me and what I got to say about it. What do y'all got to say about it, man? This is exciting. I love it. Human beings are magnificent. Again, there are those of us in our society, and unfortunately wide segment of our society, that grow up and pretty much live out their lives with the thought and the reservation that human beings are terrible, right? That human beings are weak, that human beings should soon become obsolete, that human beings are, so vastly flawed, and all these negative things about human beings that are not empowering, right? That disempower us, when in reality it should be, at least to my estimation, and what all of this suggests, science included, that it should be just the opposite, right? We should be incredibly empowered and feel greatly responsible for and in control of our own existence and reality, right? Especially in this plane, this 3D, 4D plane of existence. Man, this stuff is powerful. This stuff is powerful. You are powerful. All of you are powerful, right? So be mindful, I would suggest, of your power, and think twice, think thrice, right? About what you say before you speak your intentions into the quantum field, because your intentions are indeed impactful, powerful, right? I don't know why we go to the fist automatically with power. I guess it's the panther that used to be in me. I don't know, y'all. I just innately love that. But yeah, man. Anybody else have any comment that they want to add, a statement they want to make, or a question that they want to ask? Please do so now. Thank you, brother. Washington comes back in and says, your focus, your words, your attention could literally be shaping what becomes real from the infinite potential around you. Very well put. Very well put. I gotta do it again. You must like them darn dynamite sticks, because you keep blowing up, bro. And I'm gonna even put a new little explosive sign in there. You getting it, brother. You earned it. I'm throwing it in there one more time. The brother's on fire today, right? The brother's blowing up. That was extremely well put. I'm gonna read it again. Brother Michael states, your focus, your words, your attention could literally be shaping what becomes real from the infinite potential around you. Very well stated and put. And the only thing I might alter even slightly in that statement is that it will literally be shaping what becomes real from the infinite potential around you. Yes, yes. Folks, we exist in a field of kinetic energy, right? Kinetic energy is energy that is the potential, right? Kinetic energy has not been directed, right, into power. When you direct energy, it becomes power. Kinetic energy is in that state of infinite potential. Okay. So when we do this, when we utilize this science, unknowingly or unknowingly, we are tapping into our ability to shape, to alter, to manipulate kinetic energy, right? Kinetic energy is a very important component. It is pretty much a good description of the entire quantum field, actually, is kinetic energy. So when we do this, when we utilize this science, we are manipulating kinetic energy. Man, cool down. We got some powerful stuff going on here today, folks. We talking about powerful science, or at least the kind of science and scientific revelation that should empower you, right? So anybody else have any question that they want to pose, a statement they want to make, um, a comment that they want to add to the conversation? Sister Carrie comes in and says, "Hey, cuz, this has been." This is Sister Carrie and Alicia, I believe, speaking in the from the same joint. Hey, cuz, has been a profound session. I am a believer in intentions. I'm trying to move this darn thing out of the way. Yeah, get out of my way. Okay. How can your intentions influence manifestations? I'm gonna read that again. Yeah, this is Leash. I kind of figured it was. Hey, cuz, this has been a profound session. Thank you, by the way. You all have made it that. I'm a believer in intentions. How can your intentions influence manifestations? Well, in reality, that is actually what we're doing. Is we're tapping into this power that we have that we didn't realize we had, right? To manifest what we want to see in our 3D, 4D corporeal plane of existence. What we're doing more specifically as it relates to manifestation, because I've already talked about and I continue to try to emphasize that one of the most important aspects of manifestation is visualization, right? Um, your intentions indeed are powerful and influence your reality. So, to utilize your intentions to influence and to impact, to direct what you're manifesting, you want to rely on your ability to visualize your intentions, right? So, in other words, here's what you're observing currently as your reality, right? Here's your intentions of what you want to manifest your reality to be. Use both of those as stimuli, as input, right? And sort of merge them to formulate your visualization of a new reality. For real, y'all. We are, man, we powerful. We are powerful. Yeah. But thanks, Lee, for chiming in with that. That is a very powerful question that moved the conversation along exquisitely. And you know what you just earned. I'm gonna give you a whole bunch of these blowing up joints, these explosions. And some stars too. See, I didn't got creative up in the chat. Thank you, Leash. Thank you. Thank you tremendously. That was fantastic. And certainly a question that pulls the conversation forward a little bit more. Um, all of this is intertwined and related, right? And I think the aspect, again, I'll emphasize that we call into play when we specifically talk about our attempts and our efforts to manifest, right, is the tool of visualization, which, again, for me at least, is taking what I perceive as my intentions, what I observe as my current reality, and merging them to form my visualization of a reality that I'm manifesting. Thank you again for that, Leash. Oh man, we doing it. We cooking with fish grease like they tend to say, man. We popping out here. Let's do this. Anybody else got another comment that they want to add to the conversation, another question that they want to pose, or statement that they want to make? Come on, keep it coming, man, because y'all rolling today. Y'all doing the thing. Yeah, man. y'all's doing it. I got to give y'all a salute again, right? I'm giving everybody a bunch of these little joints I done discovered I'm playing with out here. Just throw some of these in there. Let's throw a few of these on there. A whole bunch of them because we shining. Right? Hold up. I don't know what this last one was. See, I'm getting ahead of myself. Back it up, King. Hold up. Bing. All right. Man, thank you all for a magnificent conversation. You have stimulated me immensely and made my day that much better by having this magnificent conversation with me and with each other. And again, accenting and showing how we have built such a magnificent forum, right? On this podcast, the things that we discuss, the detail we get into, the questions that you ask, the statements that you make, right? The comments that you add to the conversation just make it that much more robust and magnificent in my purview. So personally, I thank you all, truly, truly, for what has been a magnificent conversation. I'm going to throw it out there once again. Anybody got another statement that they want to make, a comment they want to add to the conversation, or a question that they would like to pose? Come on, y'all. I'm gonna wait a little bit for this one because, man, this has been a great conversation, and y'all have really made it that. I thank you again. So anything else, I'm gonna wait a few more seconds before I close this out. Any other comments, questions, or statements that you all have on this subject today? Brother Mike jumps back in. Gave him a little half a drum roll. Okay, man. Manifestation isn't just about wanting something, it's about the energy, clarity, and belief behind your intention. Indeed. Indeed. That's spot on as well, brethren. Just to give a quick little sort of remembrance or a flashback as to what I had previously spewed on other podcasts and videos about manifestation. I always believe that it, for me at least, it begins with that step one, the visualization, right? But then you don't stop there. You take the visualization and transfer it into your daily actions as you actually build for yourself through your daily actions the kind of life around you that would support the manifestation of the realization of your intentions, right? For me, I can't ever expect to become a quote unquote best-selling author if I never write a book. I can sit and visualize it all day long. I can hope for it all day long. But if I don't put any intentions into building the kind of life around myself that would make that a potential that is viable, right? Then I'm wasting my time, right? So yeah, great point once again. Brother Michael, we appreciate you tremendously. Once again, thank you for your contribution today. So yeah, man, that's That is a very important aspect of it. So that's sort of what happens with manifestation greatly. We don't go through all the steps before we start expecting the results. All right. Hey man, I want this. I'm manifesting this. Boom, and we expect it. You got the manifestation lag that I talked about in previous videos. You have the fact that you have to put it into actionable context. You actually need to perform actions that are indicative of that potential becoming a reality. Um, you have to solidify your visualization by living in a way that says to the field, this visualization I accept as my upcoming reality. Right? Yeah, man, that's very important. So when you visualize what you want to manifest, be about it, speak about it, do and live it to the best of your ability. And before you know, you will arrive at those destinations of manifestation, the uh, uh, the actual bringing about of what you want to manifest in your personal life. And when we do so collectively, remember that we all become those chefs that put our own ingredients into the pot of our shared reality. And that is powerful when we start to look and think about what's going on in the world, right? So if you didn't ask that question or make that statement, brethren, we wouldn't even be looking at this aspect of all of it. Often many of us get depressed about, feel very downtrodden about what we view as what's happening in the world. We feel very powerless to change it. But we've just fleshed out the fact that we do have the ability to change it, right? Not only in our lives, but as co-creators, we become chefs that put our ingredients of intention into that pot of manifested shared reality. Brother Michael comes back in and says it's planting a seed. He put planting, but I'm pretty sure he meant planting. Yes, indeed. You plant that seed and you reap a new reality. Indeed, indeed. All right, folks. This has been a magnificent conversation. Anybody else have another comment, question, or statement? I'm going to wait a few more seconds before closing this out. Thank you all again while we're waiting. I appreciate you tremendously, more than you all actually know. I love you all. I thank you all from the depths of my heart, from the innermost powerful reaches of my core. Thank you. Thank you all. Right? All right, man. We did it. Once again, another magnificent session. I apologize again, folks, for not being able to harness the energy of the synchronicity of 333. By the way, did you know, though, we did catch 344? The double four being another synchronicity. So, in a way, we caught a synchronicity, but we don't want to break away from that synchronicity of the 333 to 333 start time, because that very much refers to the catalyst energy, and we're looking to change things. What were we just talking about, right? We are looking to plant the seeds of the reality we want for ourselves, our families, friends, going forward as we establish this new paradigm, right? That we're bringing into fruition now, right? And I'm gonna give just a second or two more. for any comments, statements, or questions on this subject matter. It's 1:29 and 54 seconds and counting. We'll give it just a few more seconds. Okay, we hit the actual hour and 1/2 hour mark. Wonderful conversation. Wonderful conversation, folks. I appreciate you all tremendously. Thank you for being here with me once again. Please, please, please join me next week. I promise I will utilize intention and open this up at 3:33 to catch that synchronicity. So join me again next week, properly at 3:33 for another magnificent episode of Buildin with Big King. I love you all. I thank you all. And again, you all are helping me to build together. We're doing it together, chefs. We are building the foundation for this new paradigm, one that we like to say is a high vibrational frequency paradigm exhibiting peace, love, respect. Right? Thank you all. Worldwide movement, peace, love, respect. Big King S.2 out.